Hello, everybody. Welcome to Why Your Strategies to Start Working to Keep Kids Focused. Today, we're going to be talking about why your students can't focus and 3 brain-based strategies to turn that around. So, you know, those days where you walk into your classroom and you're just like bracing for chaos, like you're just like, oh, I can feel it in the air. It's going to implode. You know, like no matter what or how well you planned or this, like how many great projects that you have cooking, the moment that you say, all right, guys, let's listen up, half the room is checked out and the other half is like 2 seconds away from absolutely melting down. You're not a bad teacher, first of all, but if you're trying to motivate students with tools that ignore how the brain works, then you're gonna feel like you're constantly chasing fires. I call this triage mode. Like you're just constantly bandaging up bullet wounds instead of preventing them. That's like a really extreme example to use in a live talking about student learning, but here we are. I'm filled with extreme examples. So chasing fires and just putting them out constantly is incredibly exhausting. And it is wasting so much time and energy that we do not have, right? Like we are, especially right now, it's March, we're to our energy, mental and physical energy time limits, okay? We're barely holding on. So it's really important for you to understand what's going on under the surface of the kids, like checking out, not paying attention, being really hard to get to engage and focus. So here's what's going on under the surface. There's a part of the brain, and we've been talking about it like all month. It's called the striatum, and it filters out what we pay attention to based on reward, relevance, and emotional engagement. In the last live, I called it the brain's hype boy because it gets the brain hyped up and motivated. And it does that by being like, all right, hey, look at that, look at that, look at that. That's important. Pay attention to that. That's going to get us really good stuff, right? That is the striatum. So it filters what we pay attention to based on reward, relevance, and emotional engagement. That is not like sticker charts and candy bar rewards. That is meaningful, intrinsic rewarding. When the striatum is activated, it says, okay, this matters. This is interesting. This feels good or safe or important. What it's not, the brain tunes out, okay? Attention drops, behaviors flare. Now, for neurodivergent students, especially those with ADHD, autism, anxiety, trauma, or sensory processing differences, the striatum is much, 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 much more selective. If something feels boring, overwhelming, irrelevant, or risky, whether physically or emotionally, it's a hard no. That striatum is like, nope, I'm not going to do it. Not hyping you up for that. Let's stare out the window. That'll get us some good daydream time. So that's why some of your students can focus for hours on a video game, which is interesting and novel and meets the students' competency levels exactly where they are and just challenges just a little bit. So it's in that zone of proximal development. That's why video games are so successful, and that's why everybody's trying to like gamify education now. So some of your students can focus for hours on a video game. but they're going to lose it during a math lesson in like 35 seconds. The game lights up the striatum. Your lesson might not yet. Drum roll, please. So here's the good news. You can activate their attention. You just need strategies that speak the brain's language. You need strategies that are influence and sit in neuroscience and understanding how attention and the reward network, how those two things work together. So one of the simplest, most powerful ways to spark engagement is with a brain-based anticipatory set, or sometimes it's called an anticipatory guide. Think of this as a opening, like, why this matters moment before you even start teaching. So let's say you're introducing a writing unit. And instead of diving into structure or expectations, which I never suggest you start with. Oh man, everybody be tuned out. Anyway, so instead of diving straight into like structure, expectations, or even like what they can expect, right? You start with something personal, something controversial, or something that is student-led. So you could start with a personal story, a real-world controversy, especially if it's going on right now, or a student-made video. You're priming the striatum by making the lesson feel emotionally engaging, socially relevant, curiosity triggering. That one shift increases dopamine, which fuels motivation and attention without adding behavior charts or incentives. So I want to touch back on dopamine. A lot of people understand dopamine as being like the motivation chemical, but not only is it the motivation chemical, it is also absolutely essential for attention. There's no dopamine release, there's no attention. And there's similar functions with serotonin, but that's for a different life. Okay, so the one shift in, or one adaptation, one small adjustment to a lesson, it can shift that increase in dopamine, and it can fuel the motivation and attention without adding really anything big. I always say, like, some of these strategies, they're just so simple. It's Occam's razor. Like, the most obvious and simplest explanation is the correct one, or the most obvious and simplest strategy is the right one. And we don't notice it because it just seems too easy. Typically, they're the ones that work, and they're the ones that are sustainable. And sometimes we just need each other to help point them out. So we're going to start designing our lessons to open with something emotionally engaging, socially relevant, or curiosity triggering. Second strategy, you're going to lead with a question the brain wants to answer. Instead of, today we're going to learn about weather systems, try, could a thunderstorm really tip over a plane? Or what kind of weather could cancel the Olympics? And here's what's happening. The striatum flags it is as personal, novel, or emotionally loaded. That creates an intention surge, especially in kids with short attention spans or who need instant relevance. You're not changing the content, you're just framing it in a way that aligns with how the brain prioritizes input. And inside the Neurodivergent Toolkit, you'll get dozens of question stems, hooks, and real classroom scripts to do this in seconds. So If you really do like what you're learning right now, definitely comment needs to get the link to the toolkit because it is so good. So good. So many good strategies. Third strategy, kick off new units with a hands-on student-centered challenge. Instead of front-loading with vocab or worksheets, start with something they can build, test, present, or explore, even if it is messy. I always said the messier the better, but I'm crazy. So, for example, before teaching environmental science, ask students to redesign their cafeteria to be zero waste. Before teaching persuasive writing, challenge them to change a school rule. What's happening? You're giving the striatum control, novelty, and purpose. 3 key motivators in neurodivergent learners. Control, which is autonomy, novelty, and purpose or meaning. And suddenly you will have buy-in before your teaching even starts. And yes, there are planning templates for this inside the toolkit. So here's what I want you to hear loud, loud, loud and clear. Your kids aren't broken. You aren't broken. But the traditional behavior system and curriculum pacing guides, those weren't built for the striatum. Those weren't built for the brain. You need something that respects the brain and empowers you to teach in a way that works for real complex learners and real complex environments. And that's why I created the Neurodivergent Toolkit. Again, it's just chef's kiss. I love it so much. Love it so much because it does so much for all of the teachers. The feedback is just absolutely humbling. So the toolkit isn't just a set of ideas, it's proven practical systems. Thousands of educators have used it, and they were either stuck or they're just total nerds like me and want all of the good information and strategies that are out there. It is an encyclopedia, pretty much. Decades of research. It sounds like I'm like so old. So it's like a decade of research. A decade of research that I conducted since 2013. And I put everything that I've learned about, everything I've used, everything I've seen in this one toolkit with a workshop and tutorials and all of the resources that I could think of that would get you guys able to use it the next day. It's got over 100 strategies, lesson plans, question stems, visuals, graphic organizers. It's just jam-packed, and it is only $80, which is a huge deal if you added up all of the resources. It's got 3 ebooks. Like it's well over $365. I think that's what we estimated it as if it was on like Teachers Pay Teachers. So there's no subscriptions, no upsells, just real tools that help you get your energy, your confidence, and your students back on track. And the best part, they're all universal supports. So even your neurotypical students thrive with these systems because when we teach with the brain and mind, everyone benefits. So here's what's at stake. If you keep doing what you've been doing, nothing changes. You'll keep spinning your wheels, keep firefighting behaviors, keep second guessing yourself. But when you say yes to the Neurodivergent Toolkit, you open the door to a classroom that runs smoother. I think one of the last reviews I read was no more Band-Aids fix the problem. It's just every time I read the reviews, I'm just like, oh, yes, we did it. It's your guide. It is your guide to less stress and more joy and the ability to actually teach and not just survive. So if you'd like to check out the Neurodivergent Toolkit, if you want to get it today so that you can start on your journey to just being the best teacher that you possibly can be and having more energy and motivation when you get home, comment needs, and I will send you the link. We're going to make teaching feel doable again, and we're going to make learning feel safe and exciting for every single brain in your classroom. Comment needs, going to get the toolkit, and I will see you all later. Bye, everybody.